to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is someone that came my way by recommendation from one Dr. John Eibner, the head of Christian Solidarity International. As you know, just a couple of weeks ago, we spoke with Ambassador Sam Brownback, former ambassador for the Trump administration, former senator, former governor here in the United States, but someone who is entirely focused now on religious freedom and what it means, what it represents around the world. Nagorno-Karabakh is that sieged area within Azerbaijan that an entire Armenian population is now starving and suffering through as the Azerbaijanis are watching them literally die. Someone else who cares very much about this is the Baroness Caroline Cox, joining us from the UK. Baroness, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be with you. Thank you.
Now, to just educate my people quickly, what is a baroness?
Well, I always say I'm actually a nurse and a social scientist by intention, a baroness by astonishment. You become a baroness by being appointed to the House of Lords, which is the upper house of our UK Parliament. I wasn't into politics, first one I ever met, but I used my role in the House of Lords to be a voice for people whose voices are not heard. And certainly that applies to the Armenians who are suffering at the hands of Azerbaijan in the historic Armenian homeland of Nagorno-Karabakh.
We'll talk about that in a moment. So the upper house, that would be kind of similar to our United States Senate.
Absolutely, yes.
Got
The
it.
only
All
thing
right.
is the upper house is not elected. It is appointed for a whole variety of reasons. And I think I was appointed by Margaret Thatcher for being an academic freedom fighter.
Well, that's, look, there was no one that I respected more than Maggie Thatcher. Thank you so much for making that connection. Nagorno-Karabakh is something that we have spoken about on my platform frequently, but sadly not a lot of American press are. What do we need to know about what's going on there?
Well, it is really a potential genocide. It is very, very serious. And the international community is not responding as it should. Just to put it very briefly, Nagorno-Karabakh is a little bit of ancient historic Armenia. And Stalin, in his divide and rule tactics, cut it off from Armenia and put it inside Azerbaijan. It's called an oblast. And so it's formally within the perimeter of Azerbaijan, but it's inhabited by Armenians. The Armenians have been there for centuries. Armenia was the first nation to become Christian in 201. And there's some of the oldest churches in the world there, going back many centuries. But Azerbaijan has begun a policy of trying to get rid of all the Armenians out of this historic land. There was a war in September 2020 in which Azerbaijan did actually kill a lot of Armenians and occupied quite a lot of what is Nagorno-Karabakh. But some of Nagorno-Karabakh remains with the Armenians, and that is very, very vulnerable and very, I'm afraid, at risk of also being taken over by Azerbaijan.
What is the global community doing about this injustice?
Not enough. And that's why I'm grateful to have the opportunity of speaking here. I think Sam Brownback would agree with me, because we have an international obligation to help people who are suffering potential genocide. And the reason why I say that what is happening there is absolutely unacceptable and should be dealt with by the international community is Azerbaijan is committing war crimes, crimes against humanity. I'll just give one example, that in the September 2020 war, prisoners were taken on both sides. There was a ceasefire agreement, and both sides agreed to release the prisoners that they held. Armenia released all the prisoners from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, I'm sorry to say, is still keeping captive many Armenians, and that is utterly in violation of the ceasefire and in violation of all human rights, but is getting away with complete impunity. The other point I would just make is, sorry, just very quickly, is the only road which connects Armenia to the little land of Nagorno-Karabakh is called the Latin Corridor. And the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh rely on that for food, for medicines, for transfer of people, for medical treatment, etc. And Azerbaijan has been blocking that for many, many weeks now. And that is another, I think, war crime.
Sure. Well, what is the reaction of the Armenian homeland to what's going on?
Well, obviously they are deeply, deeply disturbed. And it is part of historic Armenia, and it's inhabited by Armenian people. And as I say, it has some of the most historic churches and buildings and sort of historic sites that you can have, not just in Armenia, but almost in the world.
Is the Armenian government formally petitioning nations to join it in its effort to see this siege ended?
That's a very good question. At the moment, it's a hard one to answer, because I think Armenia itself is under great pressure from the international community, maybe even to allow Azerbaijan to take control of this land. So this is a subject that's currently very much under discussion and cause for great concern. We do have Zoom meetings with our partners in Nagorno-Karabakh, and one of them is a real hero. Way back when Karabakh first became sort of independent, we always, my organization, Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust or HART, asked local people, what's your priority for aid? And they said, help for people with disabilities. There's no provision for people with disabilities. There was only a bombed out old building we could arrange, but the director, Vardan Telebosian, is a real hero of the peace. He's turned that into an internationally respected center of excellence for people with disabilities. But they are desperate. They're short of food, they're short of medical supplies, they're short of power, not just the rehabilitation center, but all the people. And it's a really serious situation that could disintegrate almost into occupation by Azerbaijan. So
if you were able to have a seating with your prime minister and our president, what would you ask of the UK and the United States to do at this point in time?
Well, I've already asked the British Parliament, because in the House of Lords you can speak in Parliament, and I've asked the British government if it will call Azerbaijan to account for the release of those prisoners, but also call it to account for respecting the needs of the people living in Nagorno-Karabakh, the needs for access, for food, for medicine, for transfer, and that is a real priority. And to stop Azerbaijan getting away with impunity.
Baroness Cox, thank you for sharing some time and helping explain this to us. I would like to have you back in a few weeks for an update if you're able to do that. And we want to stay on this story. I feel like we're providing a service here by staying on top of something that no one else is. And it's so important because, as you mentioned, there are so many innocents that are caught in the crossfire. Thank you for your time right now.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. It's very, very precious and priceless. So thank you.
Kevin McCullough coming back from Times Square. Don't go anywhere.
Ready or not, he'll be right back.